Welcome to another episode of Joy and Gratitude. We are ecstatic to be able to spend some time with you and just really have a down-to-earth conversation about what are we going to talk about? Oh my goodness. Beth, tell me more.
Nio, hello. Yeah, we're both, as you can probably tell, very energized about this topic. The topic is overwhelm and the power of execution. So, when we're in a state of overwhelm, what do we do? Why does that happen? And how can we use our own agency to not be in overwhelm? And the one thing I will say around this topic that I love, and I wish I could source it, I cannot remember where I heard it. Somewhere. It was maybe a podcast, but somebody called the state of overwhelm a habit. And somehow that has shifted so much for me because when you think of it as a habit, you are reminded you have agency to change. We all know we can change habits. It's really hard, but that most of us know we have been able to shift a habit with intentionality and focus. So if you think about overwhelm as a habit and you know what that feels like, but then you realize, wait a minute, I get to make a choice as to taking a step forward, making a small action, getting myself out of this state of overwhelm. It feels really different to me. So, Nio, I cannot wait to dive into this topic of overwhelm. We have so many things in our world, in our personal lives, and in life, I think right now, where a lot of people are feeling overwhelmed. So I'm really hopeful that this resonates and that we get people to realize that even in a state of overwhelm, there are things that we can do. So, with that, what do you think?
You know, I I think that we are much more aware of being overwhelmed today than we might have been 5 years ago. Um, and it's really everything to do with how things are in our ecosystem
Mm,
today of instant gratification. We
that's a
live in a
great point.
very fast track world. Um, and everything we do is instant gratification. We walk around with a phone that is a computer. We everything that we do, doors open automatically. Showers turn on automatically. You could put a timer on it and it'll turn on, waiting for you to be at your temperature, the temperature you love. Everything is instant gratification. So anytime that perfect ecosystem is shifted, we fall into overwhelm. We fall into, how do I make a decision? How do I prioritize? Where do I set my boundaries? And it's this constant, I don't know how to be. What is self? Who am I? That is how we end up in overwhelmed. And I really believe that we are just in this perpetual state of not being able to just deal with life as life comes through.
Yes. Yes. And you nailed it. I think this idea that this perpetual state of overwhelm is happening to all of us. So there's
Mhm.
a moment just to say that out loud so that we can bring some agency for ourselves, but also some compassion for others, such to know that everyone is feeling all these things coming at us. So many things. You mentioned it, but really the technology piece, the news piece, changes, the amount of changes that are happening all of the time. Uh, Macro, I was going to say, like, the macro environment changes. So typically you may have some stability and a foundation which allows you to feel a little bit settled, and then maybe things happen in your personal life or in your community that shift you. But right now we're in a place where everything is shifting. The news changes daily. There's so many things happening that it is hard to feel on solid foundation. And I would love to talk about some tools. So we talk about overwhelm and then we talk about execution or energy and where to spend our energy so that we can control a little bit, navigate through this sense of overwhelm. And one of the ways in which I have really been trying to manage my own overwhelm is I've talked about this book before, but there's a book called Essentialism, and it really talks about how we focus our energy. And one of the tools, and I may have already mentioned this on the episode, but I'm going to mention it again because it's important, that he talks about is this idea of when, what's important now. And when he tells the story, he shares a story of a coach who talks about using the win, this idea of win, not in the context you might think of, we have to win, but in the context of what's important now. And he really gets the athletes on the team to say that that play that just passed, like there's absolutely nothing we could do about that. So we could stand here and get all upset about the play that just happened, and we can stand here and anticipate the next play and get all worried about, like, what if we don't get that next play? Then we're going to lose the game and what's going to happen. The only thing we can do is stay present and focused on this current play right here, right now. That's what's going to get us to win. So I do that daily. So every day on my calendar, I have a win, and it says what's important now to set me up to say, I have so many things and I cannot do them all. If I try to do them all, if I try to expend my energy on all the things, then I look like a sun, and there's a beautiful visual. So picture a sun, which is beautiful, with all the beams going in different directions. That's a beautiful image, but it's also something that depletes your energy because at the end of the day, you look back and say, what did I get done today? And
Mhm.
nothing maybe got done. You maybe took a tiny bit of movement towards each thing, but that doesn't make you feel accomplished. That doesn't make you feel like you have more energy to tackle the next thing. And so his idea is put your energy towards the most important thing right now and get accomplishment in that area, achieve something in that area. And that will allow you to feel good, take away that feeling of overwhelm, and motivate you to do the next thing. And obviously, it can't all be linear. I don't mean if you're listening and you go, well, that's not possible. I have more than one thing to do. You can't work on one project if you're at work. You can't work on one thing as a parent, right? Of course, that's true. And you can decide to put a lot of energy in one particular area on one particular day, carve out time, and decide this is what I think is the most important thing. And I'm going to give it more of my energy today.
I'm
It's
going to
been
disagree
super
with you a
helpful.
little. I'm going
Oh,
to
do it.
disagree with you a little.
Do it.
You know,
Tell me.
and this is actually funny because my husband said to me the other day, "Do you and Beth ever disagree?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course we
Yeah,
do."
we do.
But and I'm going to disagree with you on I am a strong believer that the biggest self-saboteur that we have is when we think we have to do multiple things at the same time.
Mm,
Am a strong believer in take focus on what you're doing and do that. The discipline of focusing on that one thing for that X amount of time that you've given that thing. And this
yes.
is okay. So, what I'm
Yep.
trying to say is, I'm not saying that a million things aren't happening, but if you chose and prioritized that this thing, whatever it is important enough for your energy at this moment, then put 1,000% into that thing. That's called discipline. That's called movement. That's called action. And that drives success in relationships, in
Mm,
business, in life, in accomplishments. Because think about it, when your child is crying and they feel lost, and you put 100% into helping them regulate, that relationship is now stronger,
you're so right.
right?
Yeah.
And if you are working on a document and you just focus on it, it happens faster, the information is better, it gets done. And if we just focus, take the noise out, stop scrolling, stop trying to avoid what we have to do, then the noise gets dampened and we actually get stuff done. The overwhelm happens because there's noise. There's so much noise. And we have to quiet our brains, and we have the power to quiet our brains and focus.
I actually agree with you 100%. And what I'm going to own up to right now is this beautiful fear I clearly have that it's probably my own fear and other people's fear, the external fear that people would say you can't do one thing. But the reality is you're right. As you pushed me in that space, I think I would ask our listeners and remind myself to try and experiment. And you've said a couple of times in this conversation, 1,000%. And I think the intensity of which you're speaking is important. So when you say 1,000%, you're not throwing that word out. You're literally saying, if you want to do this thing, remove the other barriers. I think the removal of those other barriers is where you heard some of my fear, like, oh, how am I going to not do that? How am I not going to show up that way? How am I? But I agree with you. We have to start to play with committing 100% to the thing in order to feel the results that you just described. So if you're fearful that you can't, for example, say you can't get on a phone call because you need to manage your crying child or your sick child, you don't hold that boundary and you try to do both, and your kid's sick and unhappy and you're not mothering the way you want, that's a perfect example of a pull that makes you not get the results either way. And I do talk about that a lot with my clients, this idea that we can't be all things at all times. So here you've pushed me to go, wait, you tell people that it's true. If you want to be the best professional, then maybe you have to figure out the childcare. Or maybe in the moment that the child is more important, you've prioritized your child, then you just need to be really clear about that so that you're not half in, half out. So I actually think we agree, but I love the push because I think it came from fear of I still have clearly a value on being able to do all things. And maybe that's it. We got to get all the way underneath that to go, wait a minute. Why do I think that I have to be able to do all things? That's my own sort of worthiness. Like if I can't do all things 100%, then what does that mean about me? And the reality is if I can do one beautiful thing 100%, I will then be able to move on to the next beautiful thing. And I will start to create my own self-worth and understand my own value in an even more impactful way. So I appreciate the push. And I think we actually very much agree.
Yeah, and I have to be honest, I did not um, end up here on my own. Um, it was through observation of how things really get done and how you really end up succeeding in completion because we struggle so much in completion. Nobody says you have been successful at something if it's not completed. And we struggle so much with it because we have so much um, need to do so many other things
Mm.
that we never ever invest 100% in things. But then I started, as I work with my developers and all these engineers are very interesting creatures. and,
Creatures.
and I say creatures because they are just amazing people. The way that they see life is so different than an emotional way of looking at life. It's very black and white for them. And it's very results driven, which is good and bad also, but it has a place. But what I noticed is that the, the razor focus and the ability to not engage in the external and stay razor focused
Mm.
gets them moving faster. Now, let's be very real. Life happens. There's no way that you're not going to be interrupted. There's no way. However, if you are centered and you're able to prioritize, I think really that's what it is.
Mm.
Select what is a priority, very similar to what you just said with win. That is a selection of priority.
Absolutely.
Right? Select what is your priority and stick to it. Because what we do is we spend so much time on the stuff we can't change. I can't change what's happening in decisions that are not mine to be made. I can feel them, but I can't change them. So that's emotion. I can't change the way that the guy in front of me is driving and the one behind me,
Yeah.
but I can control my driving ability. So, what we have to do is we have to make the decision to focus on the priorities and the things that we can engage in and take action in, and reflect on the others, but in the right time, in the time that we say that it's the open time for it.
And one of the
So,
things you said,
yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Oh, was that you mentioned I didn't get here by myself and through observation. And I also think that in the state of overwhelm, I've often heard, and I can certainly attest to feeling this way, frozen. So even when you've decided, I'm going to do one thing, sometimes that one thing is still really hard, whether it be emotionally hard or mentally hard. It can be something that you need help with. And I think I also just wanted to say, I love that you said I didn't get here by myself, because I do think when we expend all our energy, and by the way, I have to pause and say, when you kept talking about the word disciplined, so the name of the book is Essentialism, comma, the disciplined pursuit of less. So this idea of being disciplined is so important. And that takes commitment, that takes dedication, that takes perseverance. Like all of those things are elements of being disciplined. But I think once you choose, it's a choice, agency, we have agency to be disciplined about doing one particular thing, the most important thing, the thing you have decided to prioritize because it matters most to you. You still may bump into something that makes you freeze. And in that moment, I would encourage us all to think about asking for help, because sometimes what's making you frozen, somebody else can come in and not have that same, there's too many things, even in this one particular area to handle. And they'll enable you to understand what's the one next step you need to take. Or can I help you with that phone call? Or can I help you brainstorm what might move you a little bit? And so it isn't a solo journey when we decide what is this prioritization. It's often us and others, but we stay dedicated, we stay disciplined. And even if we need help, we get the help we need versus staying frozen, which often means you take that thing you said was important and you just move it somewhere else. And you then get involved in noise.
Mhm.
It's a perfect example. You're like, I can't do this. This is feeling overwhelming. I'm going to put it over here. Not with discipline and intentionality. There's obviously some beauty if you make a choice to say, I'm going to take a walk. I need to get away, but I'm coming back. But the opposite, which is, I'm going to put this over here because I can't handle it. And then you start to scroll, or some of the other 10 things that are coming at you take your priority. And that's the piece. I love this idea of being caught up in the noise and being able to notice when that's happening. Because I do think the more disciplined and intentional we can be, whether we put it aside and come back to it, whether we ask for help, it's still the same 1,000% towards one thing.
Yeah. And, there are certain things that we also throw in there. Anxiety. Um, I, I don't want to be, um, I don't know what word I could use, but I don't want anybody to feel offended by what I'm going to say. Um, Anxiety is real, but it is an excuse.
Say more.
Anxiety is real,
Yeah.
but it is an excuse. It is something that we can label ourselves with. And yes, we can be feeling it, but we also can overcome it. So if we're able to self regulate, which is something that we are able to do, and there are different ways to self regulate, that walk, listening to music, dancing, working out, writing in your journal, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You can self regulate and take that excuse out of the way. We are riddled with excuses as to why we're overwhelmed and why we can't. It's
I
just what we do because it's, you know what it is? It's safe and comfortable. And it keeps us in that safe place of not having to deal with our fears.
I'm interested in this, and I'm thinking about your comment, and I think I have anxiety, I'll just say it, but I think this idea of naming it, this idea I work with a colleague, and he always says it's brilliant, "Name it to tame it." The minute you say it, then you can take an action to acknowledge it, and now I know very much so what anxiety feels like to me, and I think you're right, I know it, and before maybe I would know it and then shut down because of it. But now I know it, I name it, I go, "Oh my gosh, I must be feeling anxious because I don't feel like doing anything and my chest kind of hurts and I'm feeling in my definition a little bit frozen, can't move." Then I go, "Oh, that's my anxiety. That's just trying to keep me safe, as you said, trying to keep me comfortable. And this next thing I need to do feels a little scary, is a little bit uncomfortable, etc." Or it's like bringing me into that place of overwhelm, right? I I think when I now can say this is anxiety, then I am more able to use my own agency and choice to say, well, that clearly means I need to use one of my coping mechanisms to that beats anxiety for me. Go
That's
out
right.
for a walk, get out into fresh air, just walk and walk and walk. A time and calm just really get me to breathe in a different way. And then all of a sudden, that thing that was making me immovable and frozen slowly starts to become a little bit kinder, softer, and something I can work towards. So I agree with you. I think you're right. So people's reaction will be, "What? It's an excuse." But I think if you start to break it down and you start to name it and you start to understand it's personal, what it feels like for you when you're anxious, what's going on for you when you're anxious, then you can actually start to combat it and not let it be something that keeps you completely frozen and not moving and not accomplishing and stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the thing about it is when we're overwhelmed, we are in a state of the greatest fear that we have. We're in a state of flux, we're in a state of confusion. But everybody has a choice. We can say no to that state
Mm.
and we could start breaking it down, just like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time?
Yes.
Um, we could start breaking it down. And don't get me wrong, everybody. I know it's not easy.
No.
I know. I could tell you. I could give you an example of how much I knew. I, I remember having to learn how to eat again and how to use utensils again
Mm.
after a stroke, and not being able to hold it. You know how you have to have a little bit of firmness
Mhm.
on that fork, a little bit of firmness on that knife to be able to work them together, and not knowing the correct pressure element and having to learn that again. That was frustration. That was overwhelming. That was anxiety. That was humiliation
Mm.
to be in your 30s and not know how to eat again. But I had the choice of doing it over and over, over again, disciplined, so I could able to eat for myself and not have someone feed me. And I'm going to tell you, it doesn't have to be as extreme as that. But when you are overwhelmed, it is as extreme as that.
It feels,
It
yes.
feels just like that. So, what I'm trying to say is, you have the choice to take that small bite and move forward, and then take the next one and the next one, and understand that you can say no to the noise.
Yes. and that it feels really good on the other side when you have accomplished, when you've dedicated and used discipline to get somewhere. And I think the other thing I just want to say, because I think sometimes it can be important for prompting some action, prompting some discipline. Oftentimes when we get overwhelmed and we choose, I love that I said choose to stay frozen or to put something aside, the impacts are even worse. Something that needed your attention that you don't give it could be piling up. I have very, you know, concrete examples of this with
Mhm.
my mother right now, who's just feeling really stuck and really frozen, but she's putting stuff off to the side that's getting worse by not addressing it.
Yeah.
And I can see that and I know that, and I'm working to help her through that. But I think eventually, once you start to name your anxiety, tame your anxiety, and know that you need to just stay disciplined and do one foot in front of the other, one next action, that is moving you towards success. The frozen part could actually be accumulating something that feels bigger, heavier, harder to achieve. And that certainly helps me. I will say that is motivational to me. It's motivational that it's not going to go away if I move it to the side. It may even just get bigger instead of smaller, whatever the thing is. So that can be motivational too. So I think this idea of knowing that we can make a choice and that it's in our power and that it feels extreme no matter what. But the more we experiment with going all in 1,000%, staying really disciplined, the more we know that feeling of, wow, I really did it. I was terrified. I didn't want to do it, but I'm closer now. And now I have more motivation and I'm going to stay in it. I think we can use those examples to move us into a place where we stay trying, we stay coming up with our wins for the day. We really keep moving, even though the world is throwing quite literally so many things at us right now.
Totally agree. And we set the example too.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
people don't realize how many people are looking at you and trying to get a semblance of, you know, who am I? How should I act? And sometimes it's our children, sometimes it's even our spouse. They're looking to see our temperature.
Mm.
How are we handling things? Um, because life is hard, and we never know who are we setting the example for. Now, I'm not trying to say that you should be living your life, thinking about, oh, if I do this, it's going to impact Jay or whatever. I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to say is your actions are being watched. And who you are is the presence of who you show up as.
Mhm.
Who are you being? It
Mm.
is not about your performance, it's about who you are
Mm.
and how
Mm.
you are being in a
Mm.
situation. So understand that everything you do is your choice of who you want to present yourself as. And your presence is your essence. So guard it,
Mm.
take pride in
Prioritize.
it, prioritize in it. Absolutely. With that, um, let's think about what would be, and I had my song. Now I'm now I'm a little bit okay. All right. With that, what is the joy song for today? And I could only think of one, and it's Lose Yourself by Eminem.
Mm.
And that is just the kaleidoscope of life and looking at yourself and lose yourself in your passion, lose yourself in who you are. And it's that internal war with yourself, but you will come out the winner because you'll know who self is. What do we have with Gratitude Rocks?
The kaleidoscope of life. That is quite an amazing term. I love it. Okay. Let's see here. We have this beautiful green color,
Gorgeous.
and the
Gorgeous.
word is curious. So, yeah, get curious. And I do really want to say that I would love for listeners to experiment, if they haven't, with some of the ways we've talked about managing overwhelm. And just to remind us, we've talked about the wins, what's important now. We've talked about choosing how we show up and knowing that choosing what we say matters most and acting in a way of being ourselves and being true to ourselves matters, and naming it to tame it. If we're anxious, that's okay. Just say it and then understand how to still choose ways in which to cope and move forward so that we can all help navigate this world that we're in together.
Absolutely. So please take action and let us know how it worked out. Send us a comment and let us know what actually worked for you, and more importantly, how you released that overwhelmed state, because it's your choice to release it. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to having you on our next episode of Joy and Gratitude.